This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Monday, 24 August, year of our Lord 2026. We spent the first hour going through the geopolitics and the geoeconomics of our debt deficit, the economic war that Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent is bringing against the Persians. We're now going to shift focus to the jewel of the crown of our union. That would be the great state of Texas. Brian Harrison joins us. Brian, let me lay it out. And I want to, for some reason, Governor Abbott decided to do a big interview with Jonathan Karl yesterday. I want to get into that with you. But I just got to ask you, because I'm getting calls all day long. We're having meetings, talking to people. It's this issue about urgency in the state of Texas about this November and kind of holding what we've got, this great congressional delegation. Of course, the governor's race that I think Cook has now kind of put into play, said it's in play. And, of course, Ken Paxton, the great General Paxton, in this in the race against a guy that you've really, I think, described to the Warren Posse and to the conservative right in this country as a guy that's a much bigger freak than people think. Abbott has, reversed course on data centers dramatically. Now says he wants a moratorium. There's all these issues coming out. I think Sidney Powell had this thing yesterday about H-1B visas. Foreigners from South Asia taking over like the ID department, the IT department of the state of Texas. There's school teachers that have been hired by H-1B visas in like the Dallas-Fort Worth area. What is going on? Because right now people, it does not seem like they're galvanizing. I mean, they're galvanizing a handful of candidates, but there's not a mass wave in Texas to look to beat back which the left has targeted Texas as target number one to reverse the MAGA movement and basically to essentially be their platform to take over the nation. Sir.
No, look, you're exactly right. I mean, Texas is not often talked about as a battleground state, but make no mistake about it. I mean, Texas is and has long been, as I've maintained, the crown jewel in the left's plan to take over and ultimately destroy everything that made these United States the dominant world superpower, the freest and most prosperous nation on earth. And this election year is no exception. They are going to throw everything they can at the state of Texas in the hopes of turning Texas blue. And I do want to make sure that everybody listening, especially if you're in Texas, people do need to wake up and realize that just because Texas has had, Republicans have had total control of the state for going on 3 decades now, we can't take this for granted. And look, the people need to accept this. The polling is tight. It's a lot tighter than it should be, in my opinion. The betting markets even recently had James Tallarico up on Ken Paxton for the first time. Look, and I'm not one of these people, and I don't think it's wise or prudent to say, well, every disagree with must be fake. I think we need to be better than that, and I think we need to be fighting as hard and as aggressively to make sure that Republicans maintain control of the great state of Texas, as I know the Democrats are. And listen, I have been saying this as I travel around the state of Texas. People don't want to just hear about how bad the Democrats are. And listen, I could go on for an hour talking about how radical, left-wing, extreme James Tallarico and Gina Hinojosa and all this is the most radical, left-wing, progressive, Marxist slate of candidates that have ever been put up for a statewide ballot in the state of Texas. I mean, James Tallarico has nothing in common, with the average Texan's values. He doesn't even use the term, woman. He talks about my neighbors with uteruses. He believes there's 6 genders. He proudly proclaimed that our immigration policy should literally be to roll out the red carpet. for as many illegal aliens as possible. James Tallarico believes the biblical narrative of Joseph and Mary is put in there to justify elective abortions. Okay, be really, really clear on who James Tallarico is and why he's got to be defeated. Okay, this guy is to the left of Bernie Sanders. He's weirder than Tim Walz, and I actually think he's more radical than Jasmine Crockett, who he defeated. I never saw Jasmine Crockett go on TV and say God is non-binary. So yes, the Democrats are out of control. They have nothing in common with the voters of Texas, but to the elected Republican leadership in the state of Texas, guys, it's not just good enough to expose how radical left the Democrats are. To my colleagues and to the elected Republicans and wherever you are, we have got to do a better job inspiring the voters to be excited to get out and go to the polls and vote for us. And I believe that conventional wisdom is totally wrong. As we head into election year, the mainstream media wants you to moderate your message and don't offend anybody. This is ridiculous. I think Texans are starving to have the most bold, pro-liberty, conservative leadership anywhere in the country. And that's why for almost a year now, I've been calling for a special session, because it's not good enough just to say the Democrats are bad on taxes. Well, property tax bills are going up. Why don't we have a special session? I'm telling you, there's nothing that would get our voters more excited, of all parties, by the way, not just Republicans, to get up and reelect the Republican ticket than to go have a special session to cut property taxes 30, 40, 50% right now, something I've been saying for a year we could do. Let's deal with not just in rhetoric, the growing threat from Sharia. Let's have a special session right now. If the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE are terror organizations, as our governor has designated, let's legislatively codify that. Let's cut off their funding. If we're going to say H-1Bs are a problem, why do we still have our public universities and our state agencies renewing H-1B applications? I'm not making this up. I saw just last week for public relations managers at $70,000 to $80,000 a year. We couldn't find one Texan to do that. We should take the opportunity and contrast with our actions that it's the Republican Party in the state of Texas that can lead to a more brighter, more prosperous, more free Texas, as opposed to the radical left-wing progressive agenda of the left, which is going to guarantee more poverty and more destruction for the next generation. So yeah, people have got to be taking these races in Texas, if I'm honest, a lot more seriously than I think enough of them are.
Is it a possibility we could have a special session? Because it seems like that's the type of galvanizing event. Look, President Trump's coming. It's going to be a convention or a rally, whatever. I know that's going to be great, but that's going to be more great talk rhetoric. Aren't people looking for actions? And isn't that what a special session would do?
Oh, it's absolutely what would want. I think nothing would galvanize people to go and not. We should do things because they're the right thing, right? That's the motivating force. Do it because it's right. But in this instance, 2 months out from an election, it would also help reinsure or give people a reason to get not just themselves to the polls, but to call their aunt, their neighbor, their sister and say, come to the polls, reelect the Republicans. Nothing would get our voters more excited than if we got to Austin, slash property taxes, like right now. Deal with the H-1B. Let's pass Texas first employment policy in the state of Texas. Let's combat the threat from Sharia. And yeah, we got 2 functioning Sharia tribunals right in my backyard in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex that are functioning right now. Why are we tolerating that? Let's go fight back against that. And then, on this the whole issue, we've talked about property taxes, Sharia, H-1B. Let's also deal with birth tourism. The Supreme Court had their ridiculous, birthright citizenship case. Let's make birth tourism a felony. Let's show the voters that we can lead. And yes, we can do it. I've been parts of special sessions. They don't even have to last a full week. We could pass bills filed, pass it through both chambers, signed into law in less than a week if the elected leadership wanted to do it. Oh, and by the way, if we're saying James Tallarico is so bad, people are getting mixed messages, especially out of the so-called Republican leadership in the Texas House, where we have a supposedly Republican speaker who, as we speak, is allowing James Tallarico to continue holding his House leadership positions. And yes, the fake Republican leadership in the Texas House put James Tallarico in House leadership. And the fact that James Tallarico can go on CBS News or whatever it was, national TV, a week or two ago and brag that he's got a legislative record to run on, unfortunately he does, because of the fake Republican speaker in the Texas House, who apparently has allowed him to pass 60 bills. Strip James Tallarico of his leadership positions, fire the Barack Obama White House lawyer who's the parliamentarian. Let's lead with actions, boldly. Let's not just lead with rhetoric. Let's give people a reason to see that their future is in better hands, as I firmly believe it is, with Republicans in charge of Texas and not radical leftist, progressive, Marxist Democrats like James Tallarico.
Tom Tiffany, a friend of the show, went down to the Darien Gap, and we interviewed him there many times. He's running in Wisconsin. He's got a lead right now because of his anti-data center position. Explain to me Governor Abbott's. He was at one time the biggest cheerleader in the country for data centers, and then we reversed course. And we don't mind if people do it, but it's been kind of confusing what happened. Is he for a moratorium now? Is that more political because it's become a hot issue, or has he really become a convert to that you got to really take your time and think this through with these tech oligarchs, sir?
Well, I wish the answer were more satisfying, but I have to tell people the truth. It's actually confusing for a lot of people. For a decade, Greg Abbott was one of, if not the biggest cheerleader for data centers in the country. And in fact, just last year, he was at a ribbon cutting in my district, just down the road, minutes from where I'm talking to you right now. And the problem with these things is it's not just we're saying, hey, let the free market work. I'm a big free market guy. There absolutely is a need for some of these data centers, especially as we have geopolitical adversaries, China and Russia and all these other places. I understand that there is some kind of a need for them. But the reason we've had the massive explosion of them in Texas isn't because of free market forces. It's been because of something that I've been screaming from the rafters for years in Texas to try and end, which is the corporate welfare. The state of Texas, the executive branch, has been bribing these massive, rich international, data center companies to move to Texas, paying them to relocate with taxpayer dollars through grants administered by the governor's office. And then when these big data centers get to Texas, we don't make them pay sales taxes like everybody else. We don't make them pay property taxes. And the effect of that has been to increase the property taxes on homeowners who are being taxed out of their homes and small business mom and pop shops that have been servicing their community. It has shifted the burden from these rich data centers to the small business owners. And so that's the real problem. That's what we need to end. And that's what I think since late last year, I've been calling that should be on the special session agenda too. Stop giving corporate welfare to rich, woke, multinational corporations. We should say, and all corporate welfare in the state of Texas, including to the data centers. The corporate welfare has been the reason we've had these explosions. It's not been just a function of free market allocating resources. And I wish that were the case. The reason we've had the massive explosion of data centers in Texas is because the Texas government, for well over a decade now, has been taxing Texans exorbitantly and handing tax dollars, bribing them to relocate here, and then not making them pay property tax and sales tax. Let's have a special session right now. Let's show the people of Texas that finally we're going to put them first. I mean, we just had the governor's office, our Secretary of State, open an office, I'm not making this up, in the United Kingdom, in London, to bribe foreign companies to come here and foreign workers at taxpayer expense and then give them property tax and sales tax breaks when they get here. Voters are seeing that and they're not happy about it. So however we got here, but let's course correct now. Let's prove to the voters of Texas that we can earn their continued support. Let's have a special session and let's end all corporate welfare, period, but also including for data centers. That would do much more to solve the problem than what I hate to see. I hate to say we are having a lot of conflicting and confusing messaging coming out on that issue.
So what you're saying is that there are policy remedies out there. If we call special session, you can debate it, all that, but there are policy remedies out there for H-1B visa in Texas, hiring Texans. There's policy solutions out there for the Sharia law invasion. That one you don't even need a special session for. Yeah, on the H-1B thing, I actually believe the governor's got all the authority from... Yeah, he's got the authority. Look at what Ron DeSantis did. That was through the governor and his political appointees at the universities. The legislature has given... Did he freeze? Yeah, we'll get back to that in a second. This is the important thing: is that Governor Abbott, you got the H-1B visas, and what Brian is saying that you don't even need a special session on that. You could do that through executive power, like Governor DeSantis has done. Governor DeSantis has done in Florida. You've got the Sharia law situation, particularly putting some teeth, not just in Proposition 10, which is the prohibiting Sharia law. But more importantly, you can put, or as importantly right now, you can put teeth in the designation of CAIR in the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations. Put real teeth into it. Also, this situation with the data centers, cutting out the corporate welfare for the data centers and actually having the moratorium. He's got a moratorium right now. But in the moratorium, let's just do away with the corporate welfare and make sure that we don't ruin Texas, and particularly the aquifers, the water, and the power grid with more of these hyperscaled data centers. Obviously, you need data centers for this modern economy. However, until we get our arms around exactly what these oligarchs want and how they fit into the community, there's got to be I think, a moratorium. And this is what Tiffany's calling for very smartly in Wisconsin. Now, people sit there and say, well, hang on. You're going to allow the Chinese Communist Party to take advantage of it. There's no reason at all the Chinese Communist Party should even be competitive in artificial intelligence. You got the chips, which gives them the compute power. You've got the education. There's 350, 400,000 at least. I'm talking about going up to 600,000 Chinese national students in our universities. You've got Chinese nationals in the frontier labs themselves and throughout the high-tech industry, including in these private equity firms. You've got the debt financing, the lending, all of it. The five big elements that create the ecosystem of artificial intelligence is all provided by the United States. Yes, do they have some people that, because of our training and education, are very advanced in artificial intelligence? There's no doubt about that. Nobody argues that. They have been very impressive about their chip production? They have, but almost all of that information, all of that technology, all that know-how is stolen from Western companies. If you drop the hammer on the Chinese Communist Party about the ecosystem of artificial intelligence, you're going to have you're going to be able to say, okay, we put those guys in a box. Now we can look at what's going on in the United States, and this starts with the data centers. Brian, while I've got you, here's what I want to do. I want to play some of the Jonathan Karl. In fact, I'll play it in its entirety. I'm going to jump in for breaks and ask you to make your observations on this. But one last thing. You're saying DeSantis showed that you don't need legislation. You can do this through an executive order. Could that take place in Texas also on the continual hiring of H-1B visa applicants, including for PR jobs, which obviously there's plenty of Texans that could fill out? Could Governor Abbott actually do that himself right now, just with a stroke of a pen like Governor DeSantis did, outlawed in the state of Texas?
First, we have handed near total control to the regents of all of our public colleges and universities, total operational control. And all those regents are all appointed by the governor. So I actually believe it. I think if the governor of Texas could have a conference call with every one of his regents and say, hello, regents, congratulations on your appointments. If you don't solve this H-1B thing, and by that I mean, total moratorium on this by the end of the week, and document to me that you have solved this problem, your appointments are null and void, and you're not going to be reappointed. I think this problem could be solved within the week and without legislative action. You look, Florida did a very similar thing. So yes, and by the way, same thing on birth certificates. I think the governor and his political appointees of the Health and Human Services Commission could just by executive or administrative action stop giving birth certificates to illegal aliens in the state of Texas, which is facilitating birth tourism. And you talk about doing those two things. I'm telling you, I can think of nothing more that would get our voters excited, especially you throw in a special session for property taxes. I think there'd be a conga line to the polls to reelect, the Republican ticket in the state of Texas.
Let's go ahead and play. Jonathan Karl yesterday sat down with Governor Abbott. Let's go ahead and play it, and we'll bring Brian in for his observations and commentary. Let's go ahead and let it rip.
Governor Abbott, thank you for having us.
Great to have you in Texas.
So how much anger and concern are you hearing out there about data centers?
So listen, what we've been focused on is responding to concerns that have been raised about data centers and making sure that we have created a structure that's going to do more than any state to solve the problem. As governor, I have outlined the greatest detail and most comprehensive plan of any governor in the United States of America to respond to the data center challenge. Let me tell you what I've done. I have pressed pause on any new data center being able to join the operations in the state of Texas.
And other governors have done the same. Yeah.
And well, here's the deal. During that pause, I have set guidelines and guardrails that all data centers have to comply with. Number one, they must identify what water usage they're demanding and make clear they are not taking water from communities that need it. Number two, they must not take power from the Texas power grid that's needed. Number three, they must actually lower the cost of electricity for consumers. Number four, they need to make sure that they are not disturbing neighborhoods or rural communities. These are standards that are now being universally applied by all the data centers in the state of Texas.
But we see it not just in Texas, we see it all over the country. I mean, some of these town hall meetings, some of these public hearings, real anger. What is driving it? Is it the energy costs? Is it what is driving the anger? So you're out there talking to people.
One thing is the rapidity that these data centers are coming online that people didn't see coming. The other is the way that the data centers, they didn't do their job to get the support of people in local communities. Gaining the support of people in local communities is essential. Because they did not do that, that's why I am now coming in as governor saying, listen, if you're a data center and you want to operate in Texas, you have to first get the approval of those in local communities. And that's why I set that standard, no data centers disturbing local communities in Texas.
It was last year that you said that Texas was the epicenter of the AI industry. In hindsight, did Texas move too fast?
It wasn't Texas that
Hang on one second. Hang on one second. We'll get back to that, the center of gravity AI. What have you heard so far, Brian?
Well, there is mass concern about these data centers, and not just that they exist, because again, I want to lead in tech innovation, I want to lead in R&D, I want to lead in AI, I want America to lead in everything, to be very clear about this. But again, they're concerned about the exponential growth of this, and to say that, well, we're pumping the brakes or that they didn't do a good enough, you can't just really shift the burden like that after the fact, because the reality is, like I said a minute ago, and I really can't stress this enough, it wasn't like they just showed up at a free market allocating resources. They're here in the numbers. They're here because the Texas government has, for probably 10 to 15 years now, been giving them massive amounts of my constituents' hard-earned money. So it's the two things put together. It's not only are they going up in rural Texas, are they going up in communities and rural areas where people don't want them, it's the fact that Texans understand that their property tax dollars have been being given to these very wealthy data centers to subsidize not only their moving here, but then to shift the burden and then give them property tax breaks and sales tax breaks that they don't get. So if we want to actually deal with this, and we could deal with this right now in a special session, cut off their corporate welfare, cut off the sales tax abatements, cut off the property tax abatements, that would get to the heart of the issue and allow Texas to still expand, to still lead in these areas, but not have the artificially in high numbers of data centers going all over the state of Texas that we wouldn't have if it were not for the property tax breaks that these wealthy companies are getting that small mom and pop shops are not getting. Let's solve the issue. Let's not just talk about it. Let's do something. And by the way, I haven't seen much polling saying that the legislature is likely to pick up a lot of Republican seats next year. So if we believe we've got a majority right now, let's use it while we know we have it. I promise you the Democrats would.
Did anything that the governor just said right there, I mean, it's obviously, about the aquifers, about the power, about you got to cut electricity, you got to respect the rural areas. But he, in his moratorium, he really hasn't gotten to the heart of it, which is the Texas citizens underwriting this on their own nickel.
No, yeah, he doesn't get to that. There is something in some of the things he's talking about now regarding future sales tax abatements. But I mean, if you want to get to the heart of the issue is something that we have the power to change right now, because Republicans, we don't have to wait till November for Republicans to take control of the Texas government. Republicans control every single lever of power in the Texas government, and we control it today. And we can have a special session today to deal with this. And I think it's also confusing because a lot of the biggest data center companies are applauding the changes. So it's actually unclear how much of an impact it's going to have to the largest firms out there. And of course, something I'm always cautious of when I look at things like this, especially with the big ones cheering it on, is like, is there some anti-competitive, rent-seeking aspect to this? I don't know that. But what I do know is that we have the tools to cut this thing off at the source, which is the root cause, in my opinion, to the exponential growth of these going all over the place, is the corporate welfare, giving property tax and preferential property tax and preferential sales tax treatment to these wealthy companies that don't need it. They wouldn't be hearing these numbers without it. And quite frankly, it's unfair to the Texas taxpayer. We should solve this, and we should lead with action, not just rhetoric. Texans are tired of just being given empty promises and platitude. They want bold leadership that they can see having a tangible effect in their lives.
Okay, let's continue on with Governor Abbott.
It was these data centers.
But they needed approval from the government.
Well, so what data centers were doing, and this is the problem that we are facing here in Texas, but you mentioned what's going on nationally.
Sure.
And that is, they pop up in places that nobody ever heard of before until they started the construction. And so they had not been working in collaboration with the state. They'd not been working in collaboration with local governments. And so they basically dug their own grave for the problem that's been caused for them. And that's why they got the backlash they deserve. And that's why these new standards are in place to make sure they're not going to be able to operate until they come into compliance with the standards that I have set.
The approvals here in this state happened with astonishing speed. I mean, the New York Times recently went through some of this. One massive power plant for a Meta data center approved in 20 days. Another in just 3 days, another in 2 days. I mean, was that a mistake?
Well, so the way that it works in Texas, they didn't get approvals from the state of Texas.
They had to get approvals to build those power plants, to power their data centers.
So to actually begin the data center, they don't need to get approval from the state of Texas, which is the way the law currently works. One thing that they would need to do eventually is to get approval to plug into the power grid. However, in Meta, for example, out in El Paso, they are outside the Texas power grid there, and so they weren't required to be a part of getting the approvals from the power grid. That said,
so there was no public notice, there was no approval?
Well, no, there was at the local level there in El Paso. However, because my guidelines and guardrails that I've set up are so clear, the Meta data center in El Paso, which is outside the Texas power grid area, they have announced they will be in full compliance with the guardrails and guidelines that I've set out.
So this is happening.
Hang on. Okay, let's take a stop. We're going to take a commercial break. Brian Harrison's going to make it make sense because I'm more confused than ever. Governor Abbott's interview with Jonathan Karl. Brian Harrison's with us. Short commercial break, just 120 seconds. We'll be right back in the War Room. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Stephen.
So Jonathan had called me and said,
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
on and in text now more than ever. Bannon, Bannon, 989898. You get the ultimate guide for investing in gold and precious metals in the age of Trump. You need this more than ever, given the turbulence in the bond market, turbulence in the equity market. It's just said it's even going to get more turbulent. Find out why gold has been a hedge for 3,000 years of mankind's history. Do it today and get to Philip Patrick. Philip's going to be on tomorrow morning's show. We're going to talk about this more in depth. Okay. Brian Harrison, I'm more confused than ever. That was like a stream of consciousness. What did the governor say, sir? Help us out.
I'm not exactly sure, Stephen. What I do know is that people are confused. The Texas government, including the governor, just a matter of fact, okay, as a matter of fact, has been a massive cheerleader for exponential data center expansion in Texas. And there can be arguments for how much we need data centers. And again, I want Texas to lead in everything. I want America to lead in everything. That includes data. It includes AI. But the exponential growth has happened because the Texas government has been doing everything it can to not just encourage, not just allow. And there was a lot of discussion there about permitting or regulations or approvals. I mean, these projects have been largely, to the best of my knowledge, appropriately, permitted and approved. But not just that, I think they've been expedited. And we shouldn't pretend that it didn't happen, because it did happen. If we don't recognize the problem, we're not going to come up with the correct solution. And again, I think the biggest solution is not just that they were being cheer-led, that they were being encouraged, and there can be arguments over that, assuming free market forces are allocating resources and allowing normal property purchases and normal tax treatment, normal regulatory treatment. But the Texas government has been going out of its way to approve these things, to incentivize them, and then allowing the local governments, the school boards and the cities, to give sweetheart deals on property tax treatment for the data centers. That's what's been happening. That's what's led to the growth. And I'm sorry, look, Texas voters, they deserve a lot of things from their government, right? I mean, the number one role of government is to protect our freedoms and liberties. But the least they can expect from our Texas officials and leadership is the truth. We owe them the truth. And the Texas government has been giving sweetheart deals, property tax abatements, sales tax abatements to these large, wealthy data center companies. That's why we have them. We've got to acknowledge that, because that opens the door to a solution, which is to end corporate welfare for data centers. And quite frankly, I think Texas should be leading the fight to end all corporate welfare, but data centers would certainly be included in that, and that's why I've been calling for a special session since late last year to do it. But there's still time. Let's do it this month. Let's end all corporate welfare. Let's end the preferential tax treatment for data centers. Let's do it this week. Let's do it now.
Let's go ahead and continue on with the interview. Jonathan Karl and the governor of Texas.
Obviously, the midterm elections. Let me ask you the way Trump put it recently, just not that long ago. He said that voters in the country are angry at Republicans. And he said it twice. He emphasized it. He's not angry at him, angry at Republicans. Is he right?
Well, I can speak for Texas, not these other states. And what I know very well in Texas is the attitude of Republicans. And what matters most is where their mindset is going to be on Election Day. On Election Day...
Well, I'm talking about right now. How does it feel right now out there?
Listen, what matters in elections is it's not in August. What matters in elections is November. And I know what's going to happen in November, and that is there's a choice at the ballot box. And when those voters go in, they're going to choose between common sense that's offered by Republicans versus the crazy that's offered by the Democrats.
So you traveled this state a lot. What do you hear from voters in places like Abilene when you get out there, and they see Trump building, wanting to build the ballroom, talking about it almost every day, showing off his new helipad, talking about building a big arch, putting all the gold around. I mean, is that the kind of stuff that voters want the President of the United States to be focused on?
I was with voters from Abilene last night.
Okay, there you go.
And I pressed them repeatedly. I said, tell me how things are going. What are your thoughts? Are you guys happy? What do you like? These people were ebullient. They said they could never be happier. They're so excited about being in Texas. They're excited about the growth, the economic growth that we have in our state. They're excited about their community. And so I kept pressing to see if there was maybe any soft spot whatsoever.
Maybe this was a self-chosen crowd that they're coming to see you. I mean, you see it. There's anxiety, not just in Texas, but all across the country. I mean, concerns about prices, concerns about where the economy is going. And I'm just asking, I mean, when you see the president out there talking about all the money he's, wants spent at the White House to make it more beautiful, I mean, do people want that?
So let's be clear.
I mean, it's a lot of time. You have to admit, it's a lot of time that he's, just the other day, 40 minutes he was out there showing off his helipad.
And let's be clear about something else, and that is, listen, with regard to anxiety by voters, there are two components to that. One is, I know for a fact in Texas, voters are very concerned about this expansion of these socialistic ideas by people like Mandami and all the Mandami acolytes. And in Texas, the last thing that we want to have happen is to have a Mandami acolyte get elected to office in the state of Texas. And yet, that's exactly what's being offered by the Democrats on the statewide ticket.
But I'm asking you right now,
the same ideology of Mandami is on the ballot box in the state of Texas.
But I'm asking you about what Trump is doing. Let me just ask you very specifically on the question of keeping prices down, which is obviously a central part of the campaign that we saw last time. What grade would you give him on keeping prices down?
Well, I'll answer that, but in the context of your question, what I'm hearing on the campaign trail, people are not talking to me about Trump. We're talking about the contrast that exists between Republicans and Democrats in Texas. One thing, of course, with regard to prices, everyone wants to see the price of oil go down. They want to see the price of what they pay at the pump go down. And that's is one thing that we're working to address. Candidly, one of the things I've been working on in my campaign is I have the most robust campaign platform to provide affordability to people in the state of Texas, lowering housing costs, lowering health care costs, lowering auto insurance costs, lowering the cost of living in a home by slashing property taxes in the state of Texas. And so we are providing answers and solutions to our fellow Texans that don't have anything to do whatsoever with what's going on in Washington, D.C.
So what grade would you give him?
Depends on what category you're talking about.
I said about keeping prices low.
Well, listen, we all need to have prices lowered, especially at the price of the pump. And I think the president is on a track to get us there.
So you said recently that the price of gas in Texas would be below $2 by the end of the summer. Are voters going to punish you and other Republicans if it's not? Because right now, it averages $3.60 a gallon here in Texas, and we're halfway through August, more than halfway through.
So when voters go vote in November, they will vote on contrast and make a choice about do they want the Republican or the Democrat candidate. And the answer to that's far more complex than just one price point. But
you said it was going to be below $2.
I get that, but also I say that I want safe communities, whereas our opponents, they vote to defund the police. I say that I want to cut taxes, where our opponents, they'll jack up costs far more than the price of gas. Our opponents, they voted for a state income tax. They voted for a death tax. They voted to increase property taxes. When voters realize that, when these Democrats want to increase property taxes,
and they're not
they will
mind
vote
if gas
hostily.
is still over $3 a gallon.
Let me tell you what, the cost of what Texans are paying because of property taxes is outrageously high, and it's the Democrats who voted to increase those property taxes even more.
Do you still think gas will be below $2 a gallon by the end of the summer?
If the president maintains the current trajectory that he's on right now, they should be, and let me explain why. And that's because the kinetic battle with regard to Iran appears to be over. As long as there's no missiles flying that threaten the Strait of Hormuz and things like that.
Okay, so I've heard from Republicans, Texas Republicans, who have real concerns about Ken Paxton, the nominee for Senate or for your party. They say he's not working hard enough, he's not raising money, he's got too much baggage. Do you share some of those concerns?
Well, let's put it in context.
The Trump derangement syndrome of Jonathan Karl came through. I thought Governor Abbott did as good a job as you possibly can of actually focusing on what the issues are in Texas. Brian?
It is wild. Trump derangement syndrome is very much real. I don't recall the members of the mainstream media demanding people, go out and grade Biden when he had record, inflation or anything. So the hypocrisy is always something to behold. But look, one thing I would say to that, and just going to be really blunt, I don't know any other way to do it. I don't have much of a filter here. What voters want when it comes to the affordability crisis, and I'll say this directly, the main driver of affordability being a problem in Texas is government spending, crowding out the private sector, and in particular in Texas, property taxes. We've got the highest effective property tax rate in the country, according to one think tank. We need to address that head on. And what I think the issue is for voters right now, they're in the mode of show me, don't tell me. And here's the reality. We have every office from the governor, lieutenant governor, every statewide, massive majorities in the Texas House, the Texas Senate. Let's use it. When Democrat states have a one-seat majority in states around the country, their entire agenda gets through. We've got a 20 to 30-seat majority in the Texas House. Why can't we get our agenda through? Let's show the voters. They don't have to take our word for it. Let's show the voters. If the governor's got this 5-point plan for property taxes or this, that, and the other thing on health insurance to get rid of some of those mandates, and by the way, I support that. Let's do it. Let's vote on it this week. Call a special session. Let's pass it. Let's show the voters. Voters are starving for bold leadership in the state of Texas where they can see, not just be promised that next year we'll get around and talk about something. That's what the Democrats are doing. Let's be better than the Democrats. We control all the instrumentations of government power. Let's use them in the state of Texas, slash property taxes. Let's make everything more affordable, because the root cause of unaffordability in the state of Texas, I hate to say this, has been government largesse, government spending. But Republicans control all of that in Texas, and we could undo it, and there's still time to do it before the election. Let's do it. Let's get people excited. Lead boldly.
Okay, let's go hear what they have to say about Ken Paxton. Let's play it.
That's where Ken Paxton is in his campaign, and that is he was in a 3-month-long runoff that demanded capital, it demanded campaigning, demanded his attention, and so he's just now catching up in the campaign process with Tallarico. Listen, I've talked to him, and we're working with him, and he knows clearly the contrast he's going to be able to show with Tallarico. Tallarico got away with something. And that is with Ken Paxton campaigning against John Cornyn as opposed to Tallarico.
I mean, you're going to go after him hard. I have no doubt Paxton's going to go after him hard. But I'm asking about Paxton. I mean, when in that runoff, John Cornyn said he was the kiss of death for Republicans and for the Republican ticket in 2026. It would be an albatross on the party. Said if he's the nominee, we could well experience a massacre and the first Democrat elected statewide.
Elections are about choices. And when voters go to make a choice on November the 3rd, the contrast they will see between Ken Paxton and James Tallarico is so extraordinary. That choice is going to be easy. And they'll be voting for Ken Paxton and they'll be voting against James Tallarico.
Let me ask you about the future of the party. What happens after Trump? Is there an heir apparent? Is it J.D. Vance?
But listen, who knows that there's an heir apparent right now? What I can tell you is this, and that is the Republican bench is far stronger than the Democrat bench. And it's going to be a massive contrast for the next presidential election where we have all of the DSA candidates, the Democrat Socialists of America, who are lining up to try to take over the next helm of the future of the Democrat Party. And they are trying to take America down a direction that Americans will solidly reject versus a great lineup of potential Republican candidates.
So you don't think Vance is the presumptive?
I don't think anybody should be categorized as the presumptive nominee. What I can tell you is JD would be a great candidate. Rubio would be a great candidate. There are many governors who would be great candidates.
Are you going to run?
Listen, I'm focused singularly on one thing, and that is winning my election here, representing the state of Texas. I was born in Texas. Yeah. I was raised in Texas. My daily job is to fight for Texas. It means something to be a Texan. And my goal is to make sure we live up to that standard and keep Texas, Texas.
You're running for an unprecedented fourth term. You're not going to run for a fifth, are you, if you win this time?
But as Trump says, I may run for a fifth term, a sixth term, seventh term. Who knows?
You don't have term limits. He does.
Bottom line is it.
Let me have it. Brian, we got limited time. Governor Abbott there on General Paxton and also the future of the Republican Party, particularly in Texas, sir.
Well, let me be really clear about this. The primaries are over, and every Republican in the state of Texas, and yes, John Cornyn, talking about you, every Republican needs to endorse publicly Ken Paxton and do everything they can to get Ken Paxton elected as the next United States Senator from the state of Texas. However you felt before March, doesn't matter anymore. It is a binary choice. You've got a party who is the Democrat Party, has put up the most radical, liberal, extremist, progressive, Marxist sympathizer to ever run for office in the state of Texas in James Tallarico. So you have a choice between the party of more tyranny, and more poverty and more regulation and less freedom, or you've got Ken Paxton representing the Republican vision for the future of our state and our nation. That is more freedom, that is lower taxes, lower regulations, and more affordability. That is the choice, period, full stop. And every Republican in the state of Texas needs to do everything they can to make sure that Ken Paxton is the next one. And by the way, that includes the Speaker of the Texas House. Strip James Tallarico of the House leadership positions that he never should have been appointed to in the first place. So that's the choice. That's the choice we're facing. And I do believe the polls. I do believe the race is tight. And I'll say this. I think the one way, because people forget, just 6 to 8 years ago, Beto O'Rourke, Ted Cruz, thank God, beat him, but it was a 2 or 3 point race. It's not like Democrats have never gotten close before. And I warn people as I travel across the state of Texas, the one way that Democrats could actually succeed in flipping Texas blue is if Republican voters believe that Democrats could never succeed in that. We cannot take anything for granted. Every day is a sprint between now and November, and every Republican has got to do everything they can to make sure that James Tallarico is never got the word senator in front of his name.
Brian, your Twitter feed is the most hated in the state capital of Austin. Can you give it to people? Because I think people want to hear a lot more of this. Where do folks go, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. The most hated Twitter feed in the Texas Capitol, at Brian E. Harrison on X, at Brian E. Harrison on X, at Brian E. Harrison on X. Please go like, follow, share, and I'll echo the governor. Let me tell you what, I also was born in the state of Texas. I am a native Texan. I love this state, and what people are starving for is for Texas to have the boldest, most fearless, pro-liberty government in the United States of America. Let's show the voters we're capable of that kind of leadership. Let's not just tell them. Let's get to action.
Brian Harrison, thank you for spending the hour with us, sir. Appreciate you.
Always great to be with you and grateful for the posse. God bless y'all.
Thank you, sir. Brian's right. The only thing can beat us is beating ourselves, particularly down in Texas with apathy or thinking that they can't do it. These Democrats are fired up and they're throwing money at it, all of it. So Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, still in play. North Carolina, all of it's in play. And we're going to do as much as we possibly can to make sure there's no apathy in backing the MAGA leadership and the grassroots leadership have done such a spectacular job. I want to thank Birch Gold. By the way, we got the 9th free installment, End of the Dollar Empire. Now every day it's in the news. You're sitting there going, wow, what is this about the dollar? What is this about bond market? What is this about capital markets? We tried to teach it all to you. birchgold.com/Bannon, End of the Dollar Empire, 8 free installments, no obligation, totally free. It's taught now in graduate schools. Why is that? Because it's very accessible. You don't need to know any math. You don't need to know any economics. We try to lay the whole thing out. 9th free installments coming. Philip Patrick's going to be with me tomorrow. We're going to go through a lot that's happening in the bond markets and with gold, and to make sure you understand when that credit card bill of yours is going up, open it up and you'll see that the 10-year Treasury is increasing. Of course, Scott Besson and Russ Fote are working nonstop to bring that down. All of that tomorrow on the show. birchgold.com/Bannon, End of the Dollar Empire. Get to Philip Patrick and his team today. They make themselves accessible like the End of the Dollar Empire is. Take advantage of it. Matt Meck, you sent me a story about mail-in ballots Supreme Court. I'm going to get to that tomorrow because we'll have you back on. Right now, I want you to take a minute, sir, and explain about the conference that's coming up. How do people get access to it? What's going to be there? We got a couple of minutes. Let it rip, sir.
Sir, the place to go is stormsummit.us, stormsummit.us. Of course, you are our keynote speaker on 9/11, Tina Peters' birthday as well. Importantly, to folks who want to come, the discount group rates for the hotels and end of business tomorrow. So the Stratosphere still has rooms. The Sahara still has rooms. If you don't register by tomorrow, you'll have to call the numbers on the site. Tell me there for Storm Summit. But if you're coming, please register by tomorrow.
Now, how many these tickets are kind of blown out? And by the way, the Ahern and the great folks at the Ahern have actually expanded that kind of conference part where the president spoken before. There's been many conferences that you guys have hosted conferences. It's been expanded, but it's not been expanded to be unlimited seating. You're pretty close. There's only a couple of hundred tickets left, right? So we need people to go now as soon as possible. You think you're going to make it to sign up and get your tickets?
Yes, sir. We have less than about 100 tickets left. Promo code War Room for $100 off that ticket. And yes, sir, it is getting packed. And folks can't wait to see you on all the RAV hosts.
Well, no, we're gonna have a great time. One more time, Matt. Where do they go? Tomorrow's the cutoff for the rooms. You got 30 seconds. Where do we go, and where do you go to make room reservations?
Stormsummit.us, stormsummit.us. You can buy your ticket there, Steve, and also make your hotel reservations there as well.
Sir, thank you so much. I'll talk to you after the show. We'll see you tomorrow. We're going to talk about mail-in ballots. Where's my national security emergency memo? Looking for it. Talk about that tomorrow. I want to thank everybody. Our sponsors, Birch Gold, particularly Brian Harrison, taking the full time. Governor Abbott for sitting through that interview. We were able to break it all down for you. The entire team here at Real America's Voice and the War Room production team. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Tune in. You're going to be back in the War Room. See you then.